Hello, my dear friends. A good drasha has a good story. Today I have a good drasha, I think, but I don't have a good story. So I made up a story. The story could have been true, so it's almost as if it's true. You'll see, it's a good story, and I hope, Emir Shem, you'll see that it's a good drasha. Here's the story. Chaim Greenberg was sitting in Shul Rosh Hashanah. He was feeling very smug and secure. I know I'm going to have a great year. Why? Because he listened intently to the rabbi's drasha. The rabbi said, last week we read Parashas Nitzavim. That's the parasha we're going to read tomorrow. We always read that before Rosh Hashanah. It says in the beginning, Nitzavim, Atem Nitzavim Hayom Kulcham Lifnei Hashem Elkecha. Moshe Rabbeinu says to the Jewish people, you're all standing before Hashem. Rashi says, why did Moshe say that? This was the last day of Moshe's life, and the previous parsha was the tochacha, the admonition. So Moshe said to the people who were scared to death from the admonition, Moshe said, don't worry, you sinned so much before Hashem, but look, you're all standing here before Hashem. So you don't have to worry. So the Bali Musa say, why didn't they have to, why? But there is a tochacha. So the Bali Musa say that when it's kulchem, when the Jewish people are united, when it's one people, so then they don't have anything to worry about. Then the tochacha will not afflict them. When they're united together, because there's tremendous power in the tzibur. That's why we always daven tefillah b'tzibur, because the tzibur has enormous power that the individual. Mar says that tefillos of an individual are not always accepted, but the tefillah of the tzibur is always accepted, and that's kulchem. If you're together with everybody, so then with the tzibur, so then your tefillos will be accepted. Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, when he was Rosh Yeshiva, the Mir Yeshiva, when they were in Shanghai, he insisted that everybody learn in the Beis Medrash. There was no seats in the Beis Aaron. There was a shul that they were packed like sardines in Beis Aaron. But some Talmidim wanted to go learn in other rooms and other places. He says, we're in this together. Nobody leaves because we're in sakana, and the way we're going to survive is if we're united together as one tzibur, as one klal, as one entity. So therefore, he insisted they had to learn together. So this fellow, Chaim Greenberg, he's listening to the rabbi's drasha, that if you're part of it, tzibur, then you're guaranteed that everything's going to be good. It'll be Atem Nitzavim Hayom Kulcham Lifnei Hashem Elkeichem. So he thought to himself, wow, this shul, 500 people in the shul, and when they sing together, and the gunim of the davening, then the Nisana Tokaf and Kol Nidre and all the other gunim, so moving, they sing in unison. 500 people, the walls are shaking from the congregation singing together. I got it made. I don't have to worry about anything. Well, unfortunately, Chaim Greenberg walked out of the shul Matzah Yom Kippur right after Marav. He went down the steps, and a few seconds later, he fell to the ground. They rushed him to the hospital. Turned out he had a massive heart attack. He died in the hospital. They couldn't revive him, and so he's going up to Shemayim. He's traveling up the mountains, up the mountain to Har Hashem, to stand before God in judgment. And he sees an angel, and he says, Malach, I have a big taina. He says, what? How come this happened to me? The rabbi said that if you're part of a tzibur, you're secure, you're guaranteed. I was davening in my shul with 500 people, and the davening was so beautiful. So why did this happen to me? So the Malach says, you know why? Because you're only davening with 5 people. So he gets all excited and agitated. What are you talking about? I'll show you the membership list. I'll show you on the wall of the shul. There's a seating chart. Go count it, Malach. There's 500 names there. This is a mistake. You took me the wrong time. Send me back down. Are you the Malach HaMavis? I want to speak to the Malach HaMavis. I don't belong here. So the Malach says, no, sorry, Chaim. There's no mistake. This is where you belong. You didn't daven with 500 people. You davened with 5 people. So Chaim says, what are you saying? He says, I'll tell you why. He says, because when it says kulchem, it means if you're united with the tzibur. You're only part of the tzibur if you're united with them. You're only united if you love everybody in the tzibur. If you don't have tinus, if you're upset about different things, if you're upset at this one because of that, and this one because of that, so then that's divides you from the tzibur. Then you become a separate entity from everybody else. And you there's 500 people, but you have 495 people, you had tinus. This one never said good Shabbos to you, this one you don't like the way they dress, and this one you think he has a corny sense of humor. There's 5 people who you like. Those are your fishing buddies. You go fishing. Those are the people that you're close to. You're together. Okay, so you're davening with 5 people, but you may have stood in the room with 500 people, but you didn't daven with 500 people. You weren't part of the tzibur. You weren't part of the kahal. So the lesson here is that on Rosh Hashanah, everybody wants to have Ksiv Tova. We've got to be part of the tzibur, and being part of the tzibur, it's not enough to be in the room with everybody else. We've got to take all our tainas, put them on a boat, and send it out to the middle of the ocean, and then send a torpedo and sink it to the bottom of the sea. Throw away the tainas. There are people that hold on to tainas for years, 1 year, 10 years, 50 years, 70 years. They don't let go. We're all that way. And they see flaws and they see faults. You have to see the good in people, and that's the way you become part of the tzibur. There's a terrific story about Rav Shalom Ber, the 5th Lubavitch, Shalom Ber Schneerson, the 5th Lubavitch Rabbi. He had a chassid, Rav Munya Mosenson, and it has to do with the pasuk in the Parashas that says Moshe Rabbeinu lists the members of the Jewish people that were studying together when he was addressing them, and he says, Mechote ve'tzecha ad shoev memecha. He spoke to everybody, including the wood choppers and the water drawers. So why does he mention the wood choppers and the water drawers? So Rav Shalom Ber had a chassid, Rav Munya Mosenson, and he was talking to him about one of his chassidim, and he said that this chassid is half of a fella. He's amazing. So Rav Munya said, Rabbi, I don't see anything special about that fellow. He's just a plain guy. So the Rebbe said, okay, didn't say anything. A few minutes later, he asked Ramunya was a diamond dealer. He says, Ramunya, could you show me, do you have schora with you? Do you have merchandise? He says, yeah, I have diamonds in my pocket. He says, could I please see them? So he takes out a pouch with his diamonds and he shows them to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe's examining the diamonds. And then he asks Ramunya, which is the most expensive diamond or the most precious one? So he takes out one diamond, he shows it to Rabbi. So Rabbi, he takes it and he looks at it and holds it up to the light, and he says, Ramunya, I don't see anything special with this diamond. So Ramunya says, Rabbi, you have to be a maven to understand the diamond. So the Rabbi said, that's exactly my point, Ramunya. To see people, to see the greatness in an individual, to see why somebody is half of a fella, super special, you have to be a maven. You have to be because people are like diamonds. Only mavinim understand the greatness of people. And if a person wants, and that's why the Chumash includes, these were plain Jews, simple people, wood choppers, water carriers, but they also had Jewish souls, Jewish Nitzavim. They also had tremendous potential, and therefore Moshe Rabbeinu includes them in the list of members of Klal Yisrael. So if a person wants to daven, if we're in a shul with 500 people and you want to be part of a tzibur of 500 people, you've got to see the potential good of every one of those 500 people. But you'll say to me that sometimes we don't know. How are we supposed to know that the people what their potential is? And especially sometimes we see flaws in people, so it's very hard. You see a flaw, it's hard to say, oh, well, maybe the person's special. So I heard a terrific vort from somebody. Somebody sent me a video. I don't even know the person's name. It was a young Hasidic Rabbi was giving a drasha, and he said the following. The Gemara says in Kedushin that if you mekadesh an isha with kesef, with money, it has to be worth a shava pruta. It has to be worth a significant amount. Shava pruta is probably about 5 cents. But it has to have some value. The ring, before the Kedushin, the rabbi will take the ring and show it, the Messiah Kedushin, and show it to the Eidim, the witnesses, and say that the kala, in earshot of the kala, is this ring worth a shava pruta? Because she has to know that it's a real ring and not a fake. So the Gemara says, let's say you have tamarim, you have dates, and the dates are they're worth a diamond dozen. A diamond dozen, each date is worth less than a penny. So the Gemara says, let's say you're mekadesh with a date. You give a date to the kala, and you say, Harei Mekudeshesli. So the Gemara says, even though the dates are not worth a shava pruta, Safek Mekudeshes, she's Mekudeshes, it's possible she's Mekudeshes. The Gemara says, how's it possible? It's impossible. The Gemara says, Shema Shava Pruta b'Madai. Maybe in Madai, which is some faraway place, maybe there a date is worth a shava pruta. Because maybe In this location in Bavel, where the Gemara was recorded, the dates were diamond dove. There were so many dates they weren't worth anything. But maybe in another place, the dates are worth a lot of money. So this person said that you never know. Maybe a person has the quality that you don't see. As people, they look at individuals, they just see what's in front of them, and they're one-dimensional. We see one flaw, that's the whole person's puzzle. It's gamarno. There's no good in the person. You toss them out. But you never know the potential of the person. Shem b'shava pruta mother. Maybe in a different circumstance, maybe in a different place, maybe in the future. You never know what greatness will emerge from that individual. It's 9/11. It's going to be in a few days. I was there. I was at 9/11. So it's an emotional day for me. I was together with many of you under the World Trade Center when it collapsed. There was President Bush made note of the heroism of A.B. Zalmanowitz, Zichrono Livracha. He was in the tower when the plane struck, and he had a co-worker, Edward Beya, and everybody ran down to safety. And he refused to leave. He was a paraplegic, Edward Beya. He had a nurse. He told the nurse, "You're a mother of children. You go. I'll stay behind. I'm going to wait until the rescue people come," because he was in a wheelchair. So he stayed with Edward Beya, and he lost his life. That's greatness. He's a giant. Shema Shava Pruta B'madai. People, I'm sure he was an exceptionally special person, but nobody knew that he was a giant. But Shema Shava Pruta B'madai. But in that moment, then you saw the tremendous greatness that was in his neshama, in his soul. The Gemara says that there were two brothers, Lulinus and Puppus, and they gave up their lives to save the Jewish people because there was a blood libel. The daughter of the Caesar was murdered, and they blamed the Jews naturally. So they came forward and they said, "We were the ones that committed the murder," and they were put to death. So the Gemara says that Ein Kol Ber Yochel Hamad B'Mechitzasa. They were Harugei Lud. Nobody could stand in their mechitza. So because they were most of Nefesh HaKlal. So it occurred to me, Lulinus and Puppus, those are not Jewish names. They were probably Hellenized. They were under the influence of the Greek culture. So maybe they weren't Shomer Mitzvahs. Maybe they weren't Torah observant people. But they became so great that the Gemara says nobody could even stand in the place where they're standing, because it shows Shema Shava Pruta B'madai. You never know. Lulinus and Puppus, don't write them off. They became the giants of the Jewish people. You know the famous story of Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, that his Talmidim, was said that they wanted to go to the north to daven by the Kvarim, by graves of tzaddikim for somebody who was ill. So Shlomo Zalman says, "Why do you have to go north? Go to Har Herzl. You have people buried in Har Herzl." And the people in Har Herzl, they were Ma'aseh Nefesh HaKlal. And my Rabbi Rav Chaim Shmulevitz says that any Jewish soldier who gave up his life for the Jewish people is like Lulinus and Puppus. They're Harugei Lud. They're Ein Kol Ber Yochel Hamad Mechitzasa. Nobody could stand in their place. So when these soldiers were alive, people would look at them and say, especially somebody who themselves is Torah observant, would say, you write them off. Who are they? There's nothing special about them. We look down on them. I told this story many times about, I was on the plane. I was embarrassed. I went to Eretz Yisrael to visit my father. There was an Israeli Jew with his family, not a secular Jew, no yarmulke. He was loud and he was eating nuts and throwing them on the floor. I thought, these Israelis. Came to Eretz Yisrael, went to my father's house, stayed a half hour, and then I ran to the kotel. Who do I see at the kotel? This Israeli Jew with a white yarmulke. He didn't have his own yarmulke. At the kotel, they gave out these paper mache yarmulkes stapled together, a white paper on his head, and I was so embarrassed. I said, "Look, I wrote the man off, but I didn't remember Shema Shava Pruta B'madai, that maybe when we come to Israel and he has an opportunity to go to the kotel, he was there before me. He preceded me. he ran there before I had a chance to get to the Kosel, because you never know. Shema Shava Pruta B'Madai. And there's so many times that we write people off. We can have somebody who has, everybody has their flaws, and what the tzara is that we're single dimensional. If we see something, if we see a person, and maybe they don't daven, or they don't come to shul, or they speak lashon hara, okay, those are all flaws, but you never know. Shema Shava Pruta B'Madai. Maybe that person is supporting a family in Israel and he gives them $50,000 every year. Do you know? Do you know where they stand in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's eyes, in front of the Kisei Kavod? Maybe it's Shema Shava Pruta B'Madai. Maybe before HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that person is a tremendous tzaddik. And maybe you think you're such a big tzaddik. Maybe you're compared to him. The Gemara says that. The Gemara says that somebody like the Luganis of Pupas, no, Ein Kober Yochel Rama Michitzasan. Nobody, no tzaddik. There were plenty of tzaddikim then. The tzaddikim then were not as great as Luganis and Pupas. Why? Because one time they gave up their lives and they saved the whole Klal Yisrael, or at least that community. So they're giants. Shema Shava Pruta B'Madai. Never forget Shema Shava Pruta. It's such a powerful phrase. It has a different meaning in the Gemara about Kedushin. But that's how we should look at every Jew. That we see somebody and we think, this and that. Shema Shava Pruta B'Madai. And if we look at people that way, even if it's Shoei Memecha, the wood choppers and the water jars, and we realize, look at the tremendous potential. And it's Jews, and I have to say it's non-Jews. It's Jews and non-Jews alike. There were so many non-Jewish heroes. Every day I pass by the World Trade Center, the first responders. There's a plaques for them on the wall for firefighters. They also gave up their lives. It was also an act of greatness. A human being has a tremendous capacity for greatness. So if we remember Shema, if we look around in the shul and we're davening, and we take all our tightness and our bitterness and animosity and hostility and all that, and we put it on an iceberg and we let it float away someplace down the ocean, and instead we replace that with a sense of Shema Shava Pruta B'Madai. Then in Mirza Shem it'll be Ata Nitzavim Kulchem Lifnei Hashem Alkeichem. We'll all be zocha to a wonderful year and Eksiva Chesima Tova.